Hi, my name's Whitney Frazier, and I'm doing my presentation over E&J Gallo Winery. It was my passion and career in the wine industry, actually, that led me to choose this company to analyze. So what I'm going to be talking about, a few things. First of all, I'm going to give an introduction, and then I'll give a talk about the past and present key players of the company in Gallo. Next, I'll give some company history, and within this, I'll talk about their winemaking accomplishments and their moving into the premium wines. That's part of their history. After this, I'll give the company and family standing, and then I'll give a trajectory of the company and some final thoughts after that and my references. So a few things first is Gallo is a world-renowned winery. It happens to actually be the largest wine producer in the world and largest exporter of wine in California. So, in fact, Gallo started producing wine since 1933 when two brothers decided to grow the company to what it is today. The value and family tradition of Gallo is something that they take a lot of pride in for Gallo, and they're very committed to their practices, which are sustainability, energy efficiency, environmental friendly, and water stewardship, which is amazing because it's such a big company. They have a lot of passion for their values. So the past key players, obviously the two brothers who started the company, Ernest and Julio Gallo, in 1933 in Modesto, California. They decided this because their father was an Italian immigrant, actually, who taught them to work in the vineyard when they were young. And then one day they decided to have their own wine after their parents passed away. They wanted to start making wine of their own. So Ernest and Julio had a younger brother, Joseph, was kind of a key player. He did some owning of the company later on. Joseph decided, he was their younger brother, and he decided that he wanted to make cheese and use the Gallo name for the cheese. However, he wasn't able to do this because the Gallo name had already been trademarked, and so he had to stop using the name within 30 days and lost his case in court, of course. And that was that with Joseph. Eventually, the two brothers died, and the next generation took over. What's good is they had a lot of family, so they were able to take over efficiently and get everything switched over in a good, timely manner. They had David, Joe, and Bob Gallo all owned different parts of the company, did different roles. And then there was also Jim Coleman, who was Julio's son-in-law, who took over the warehouses and bottling plants. So present key players, kind of hard to find in my research, but what I found was the current CEO is Joseph Edward Gallo, who is not to be confused with the Joseph Gallo I just mentioned, who was the younger brother. This Joseph Gallo, or Joe Gallo, was is the son of Ernest Gallo instead of the brother. So Greg Coleman is the great nephew of Ernest Gallo and is the vice president of grower relations. While Jenna Gallo is the granddaughter of Julio Gallo, and she has started taking an interest in winemaking at a very, very early age, around 10 or 12 years old. And it was then she developed a passion for it with her family and all that kinds of things. And so then she started to get really interested, got her bachelor's degree, started working as an intern at an experimental winery they had in Modesto for Gallo, and went to UC Davis. And now she is the head winemaker of Gallo Family Wines. So a little company history is that Gallo Winery started to flourish, of course, in 1933 when the two brothers started to make their own wine. They're both kind of known for their own thing. Ernest Gallo is remembered for his increasing domestic demand in the 60s and 70s. And he was also credited with the idea of basically getting a group of people together and selling wine exclusively. And this was because the attention of liquor was gaining, and it was after Prohibition, and people wanted liquor, and rankings were gathering for that, and so they decided they needed the rankings to gain for wine, so they started the program with people selling wine exclusively. So his brother Julio was known actually for adopting the stainless steel tanks that we use for winemaking today instead of the wood cask, which is very important, a very thing that happened in the past. So to get started with the winemaking, the brothers made a deal with local grape growers in the area to exchange their grapes in return for a share of Gallo profit. Very classic exchange, and in the first year they had already made $34,000 in the 60s and 70s. Or that was in 1933, at the end of 1933, they had already made $34,000. So, winemaking accomplishments. In 1942, the brothers purchased 2,000 acres of land in Livingston, California. Then they started a research program for viticulture. This helped introduce beneficial variables into the winemaking operations, which helped them. In 1957, Gallo introduced a citrus-flavored fortified wine that was a marketing success. It was attributed to all the depressed neighborhoods because of its low price and high alcohol content. Well, this kind of brought a different perception of the Gallo name, and the public became concerned with this. So Gallo stopped selling in those types of neighborhoods and put a stop to the Thunderbird wine. To continue on with that, in 1965, Gallo established a grower relations staff of wine professionals who worked with the viticulturist, and it was in 1967 when a quality drive was initiated with California grape growers. This was a 10 to 15 year contract that allowed them for Gallo to pick kind of what grapes they wanted them to grow and purchase to introduce more varietal wines. And they also offered to pay a fair price for the grapes. So it was beneficial for both parties. And this allowed them to, of course, reintroduce the new grape varietals that they got to pick and get rid of Thompson seedless grapes. And then it was in 1972 when Gallo was praised for having the best wine for the value in the country. Moving on to how they moved into premium wines, it was in the 1980s when Gallo started to move into more of a premium wine market. They introduced the Bartles and James wine cooler. This was a huge success because of the campaign and a highly competitive product. However, demand dropped for wine coolers in 1993, and other products came into play. And it was the 1990s when consumers started to move to more expensive wine. So Gallo had to adjust to this, and as they were seen as a lower end brand of wine, they had to adjust, and so they started to introduce varietal wines under new brand names that didn't include the Gallo name specifically, so that they could be successful in the premium market. So in 1996, Turning Leaf became one of the top 12 varietal wines in the supermarket, which was one of the names that Gallo introduced. So company and family standing. Gallo is the largest exporter of California wines and the world's largest family-owned winery with more than 80 brands. They own more than 16,000 acres of vineyards, and their products are sold in more than 90 countries. Gallo works with more than 3,000 suppliers and has purchased 5 wineries in 2016, while purchasing another one earlier this year, which I'm sure they plan to continue to purchase more. It's all on their timeline on their website. And the current CPO is, like I said earlier, Joseph Gallo, and head winemaker Gina Gallo. So for the trajectory of the company, well, not only has Gallo been a long-standing company, but a very successful family business and enterprise for a very long time. So it's been said in the Family Business Consulting Group on their website that only 30% of all family-owned businesses make it to the next generation. And then of that, only 10 to 15% make it to the third generation. So Gallo has been standing for 84 years, proving that they are one of a kind family-owned business and that they can be that 10 to 15%, and that they are committed to their family values and their company, of course. So with this information, I've gathered that Gallo will continue to be a very successful family-owned company and continues to do everything that we have learned in this class correctly and continue to be successful like they've always been. So some final thoughts about Gallo is that they take, of course, a lot of pride in their company history. Basically, any website article I went to talked about their history and how important their ancestors were with their brothers that started the wine. which is very good. And their website was good with containing good information about their values and family tradition and how important that is to them and a timeline. But the only thing that I thought was lacking was that they didn't have that much information of what the current generation that's owning the winery right now. They did a good job of covering the history, but I would like to see more about the current generations that's very successful right now. So they give a lot of credit to their past and history, which is right by them, but they need some more information about their current growing successful company and their generation that's doing that now. So however, Gallo's success story is definitely one for the books. I mean, it's definitely a family enterprise success. So I was happy to do this presentation over them, and I hope you enjoyed it. And here are my references that I used. That's it. Thanks.